I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Ultra Ninja JK, dupla jinxa, bota chakra em cada linha de faca. Face, macramé no micado, base, espadas por frases. Sintático, repara no que digo, é paradigmático. Não tenho paralelo, sou para lado mágico. Sabes como rolo, martelo pneumático. Técnica secreta do monstro roxo. Estamos a meter-nos no dojo, estamos a manter como no jogo, só com uma espada nos tojos. Plano picado, não sabes de onde esta ave vem. Nenhum radar pode detectar onde está a nave, mãe, tu sabes bem. Somos a clique, somos o clã. É Monster Jinx cabrão, respeito ao vais comer tartan. Na terra do nunca não digo banzai. Vivo na espelunca e tenho um bonsai. Ninja que é ninja, ninja, frotas imperiais. E bate mal, logo bate mais. A minha crew não sem espelhos na rua. Dragão azul, dragão vermelho, sente o silêncio. Verso shinobi, nunca me canso, sou de Nairobi. Ágil como um ninja, rápido como um ninja. Letal como um ninja, brutal como um ninja. Fatal como um ninja, forte como um ninja. Secreto como um ninja, deve mesmo ser um ninja.
Esta é para os meus ninjas, só para os meus ninjas. Onde é que estão os meus ninjas, 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 ninjas. Esta é para os meus ninjas, só para os meus ninjas. Onde é que estão os meus ninjas, 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 ninjas.
And a hello everyone, and welcome to another Westerosi Ninja Election 2020 video. In this video, I will be offering a high-level summary of the 4th Democratic Party presidential debate that happened last night with a rating for each of the candidates' performances, so that should be pretty fun here. Remember, these are my opinions only, and I would like to stress that these opinions are not necessarily those of current collaborators and or future guests on this channel, as I do live streams and videos on a variety of different subjects. As usual, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you do, and leave any feedback that you may have in the comment section below. So let's go ahead and start. Well, let's see. Here's a kind of an overall summary of what happened last night. Basically, it was about 2.5 hours long. The location was in the bellwether state of Ohio at Otterbein University. Ohio is a critical battleground state. It has accurately predicted the results of presidential elections since 1896, and it is a very, very purple state. The partners were CNN and the New York Times, and the moderators were Aaron Burnett and Anderson Cooper of CNN, and Mark Lacey of the New York Times. Just a quick summary of what the qualifications were in order to get into this debate here. A candidate must have received 2% support in 4 national or early state polls that were publicly released between June 28th of this year up until 2 weeks ago. That's one qualification, which is the polling criteria. The other component to qualification was grassroots fundraising, where the candidates must have received 130,000 unique donors and a minimum of 400 unique donors in at least 20 states. So with that, let's go ahead and go over now who the participants were again. Essentially, we had 12 participants. From left to right, we're looking at Tulsi Gabbard, Tom Steyer, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, Beto O'Rourke, Amy Klobuchar, and Julian Castro. And the way the polling order was laid out was that the higher polling candidates are towards the center of the stage, and the lower polling candidates are towards the wings of the stage. And that's reflected in the chart that you see in the bottom half of the slide here, where basically you see kind of the average of the 6 recognized national polls and what their average polling percentages are. Basically, our quote-unquote front runners were Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden, and the ones that barely made it in here were essentially Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard, and Julian Castro. So, with a bunch of other people in the middle, and that's pretty much it here. So let's go ahead and look at the talk time last night. So basically, who had the most talk time? And what we can see in this chart was that basically the two front runners here, Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden, had the most talk time. Elizabeth Warren actually topped the list with basically 22 minutes and 58 seconds worth of talk time in a 2.5-hour debate. Joe Biden came in second with 16 minutes and 27 seconds. And surprisingly, we had a lot of talk time from Amy Klobuchar, who's only basically averaging a 1.3% in the national polls, but she got in there with 13 minutes and 14 seconds. And looks like Beto O'Rourke also surprisingly with a 1.8% RCP average, got in there with 13 minutes as well. Bernie Sanders, good job Bernie for hanging in there and actually coming to the debate after heart surgery 2 weeks ago. He got 13 minutes of talk time there. Then Pete Buttigieg, 12 minutes and 57 seconds. Kamala Harris, 12 minutes and 24 seconds. Cory Booker, 11 minutes and 45 seconds. And Andrew Yang with only 9 minutes and 37 seconds again. So it looks like the Yang media blackout is pretty much still in force here. Andrew Yang has a RCP of about a 2.7, which is higher than Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, and Amy Klobuchar, but yet he basically has about 4 minutes less talk time than either of those candidates there. And then rounding out the talk times, we had Julian Castro at 8 minutes and 25 seconds, Tulsi Gabbard at 8 minutes and 21 seconds, and lastly the newcomer Tom Steyer at 7 minutes and 12 seconds. Not surprisingly that these three are sort of at the bottom of the polling averages. So that is basically a summary of the talk time in terms of who actually got the most screen time for the debate. As we can see, Elizabeth Warren as the front runner deservedly gets a lot of the talk time since she has the most. Since the moderators will ask her the most policy questions, as well as she gets most of the attacks from all the other candidates, and that's what we saw last night. The new reality here is that Elizabeth Warren is now considered the front runner. She's surging, whereas Joe Biden is steadily losing ground. So let's go look at the report card and how am I basically rating each of the candidate performances here. It's basically on a 5-point scale. 1 ninja means that it was a train wreck, up until 5 ninjas meaning that it was a breakout performance. 2 ninjas weaker than expected. 3 ninjas, okay, not great, but good enough, right? I mean, it's not really going to change, in my opinion, any kind of polling numbers here. A great performance will warrant 4 ninjas, and that's how it is. It's basically 1 through 5 scale, and you may choose to disagree or agree with this sort of report card, but hey, everybody has an opinion, right? So that's how I'm going to start grading these candidate performances from last night. So let's go ahead and start with Tulsi Gabbard, the U.S. representative from Hawaii. And I will be going through signature issues in terms of each of the candidates because I didn't do that last time. And I think it's good to basically discuss these, as during the post-debate to see whether or not they actually stressed a lot of these signature issues and how well they actually talked about them. Her signature issue is basically the opposition of American military intervention overseas. She's a dove when it comes to regime change wars, but she's a hawk when it comes to fighting terrorism, and she differs from everybody else basically on that national and foreign policy are inseparable. Basically, one affects the other in terms of money spent and in terms of how America looks on a global stage. Her RCP average was a 0.7, so she was pretty much the last person one of the last people in this debate. She only got 8 minutes and 21 seconds of talking time. I gave her 2 ninjas here, basically weaker than expected, only because I was expecting her to basically go after some of the progressives, especially Elizabeth Warren, in the areas of foreign policy, since that's something that Elizabeth Warren doesn't really talk a lot about. And, there's questions whether or not she's fit to be quote unquote commander in chief here. Unfortunately, Tulsi Gabbard in her responses took a while to wind up, basically before she went on into attack mode. In the August debate, she pretty much kneecapped Kamala Harris right from the beginning, in her responses, and with vigor as well as with urgency, if you will, and that really, really basically took Kamala Harris out of her comfort zone, and she really hasn't basically recovered since that. But I was expecting Tulsi Gabbard to actually do sort of the same to another candidate here, and I just didn't see it. The moderators did ask her questions. She got 8 minutes and 21 seconds of talk time, but she just kind of like started off really slow in her responses, and I just didn't see that sort of urgency in going into attack mode like I expected. Granted, she took some time basically defending herself against the New York Times smear article written about her a couple days ago, where she was accused of being a Russian plant, which is totally unfair. And but at the end of the day, she just she didn't. I expected more out of her, more aggressiveness out of her, and I just didn't get it from her. And I was surprised that she didn't actually talk or discuss about why she actually went back into the debate when a couple of days ago, over the weekend, she actually threatened to boycott the debate because of the perceived rigging of the election by the DNC, and no explanation there as well. So we could have expected. I'm kind of disappointed by her performance. I don't think it's actually going to move her polling numbers either way, honestly. And there you have it. So that's my kind of my summary on Tulsi Gabbard's performance. Basically, two ninjas there. Let's go look at Julian Castro. It's kind of almost the same thing as Tulsi Gabbard in a sense that I expected him to go on to the attack mode as well, being such a low polling candidate. I mean, he only has a 0.7 RCP average, just like Tulsi. His signature issues are immigration system overhaul and universal pre-kindergarten. Unfortunately, CNN chose not to ask any questions about immigration, which he might have basically shined in, or basically, had perhaps a breakout moment. Instead, they basically talked about the health of Bernie Sanders and the older candidates, and Ellen DeGeneres, and her basically, joking around with George W. Bush, which I think were kind of wasted time in terms of the questioning, because I think more people would have, we really should be focusing on other issues such as climate change and immigration, which was not actually talked about yesterday in last night's debate here. So, I was struggling whether not to give him an incomplete or 2 stars, but at the end of the day, I gave him 2 stars only because I did expect him to go into attack mode, sort of like what he did with Joe Biden, in the September debate, and he just didn't do anything. So I'm not sure what was wrong with Tulsi Gabbard and Julian Castro last night in terms of going into attack mode, especially with their campaigns being in peril of not making it to the next debate. But I don't know. So talk time again was similar to Tulsi Gabbard at 8 minutes and 25 seconds. Again, Julian Castro, I wish I saw more of him in terms of aggressiveness and urgency, in terms of propping up his campaign, but we didn't get it there. Let's get into our third candidate here, and that is Tom Steyer. He's pretty much a new face. This is his first time on the debate stage. He entered the race very late in the game, I think like in June. His signature issues are fighting climate change, promoting renewable energy, and impeachment, baby. He has an RCP average of 1.0, and he had the least talk time of all the candidates in last night's debate with only 7 minutes and 12 seconds. I'm not sure whether or not is because he hasn't been on stage yet, so the moderators don't know what to ask him. Hopefully they did their research and basically knew what he stood up for, or whether or not there was some sort of anti-wealth, anti-business, anti-business philosophy going on with the moderators, and they just kind of want to black him out a bit, kind of shut him out of the debate a little bit. Because billionaires are kind of vilified in terms of this election cycle. But anyway, interesting candidate here. He had some pretty good responses. When he was asked about, the other candidates' war on billionaires and the wealthy, he actually said himself that he was in favor of basically, a wealth tax, and basically said that the way the economy is rigged right now, that it is in favor of corporations. That's where all the wealth is basically concentrated in, and quote unquote, I would undo every Republican tax cut for rich people and major corporations. And this is coming from a guy who headed a hedge fund company, Fairlawn Capital, and basically is a multi-billionaire. So he's all for that, and it's kind of an interesting thing. Again, I'm wondering whether or not people are just mistrustful of the fact that he is a billionaire in next year's election. Thus, they don't want to basically give him time to talk about his other key talking points, central issues, especially fighting climate change. I mean, he basically has fought climate change for the past 10 years, and unfortunately, we got Ellen DeGeneres and George W. Bush instead of climate change questions. So I'm hoping that he actually, he has qualified for the next debate. I hope he gets more talking time. But I wouldn't say that he has a weaker than expected performance, because he hasn't had a performance yet on a debate, but it was okay. No, not great. So, given the time that he had, so I'm giving him 3 ninjas for that. Let's get into our next candidate here, and that is Amy Klobuchar, the U.S. Senator from Minnesota. Her talking points were the opioid crisis, which was actually heavily talked about last night, drug addiction, and addressing the cost of prescription drugs. She's also economically on the center side, so she is one of the 3 or 4 centrists that were on stage last night. Her RCP average is a 1.3, which is relatively low, right, versus the other candidates. And but surprisingly, she had the 3rd most talk time out of everyone in the debate last night, and not sure whether or not the nature of the questions were just geared towards her, or there was an intentional basically collaboration of all the centrists to go ahead and attack Warren, or attack the Warren and the other progressives. Thus, when it came time to responses, they would get extra talk time, because as the rules in the debates goes, if your name is mentioned, you will get a response to any sort of argument. So, but what I saw from her, I gave her 4 stars. I think she did a really good. She gave a really good performance here, and it's not just because that she had more talk time. It's because I think we actually got to know her a little bit better in the previous 3 debates. She was just there, part of the centrist coalition, if you will. Another Joe Biden. Why would we want to vote for her when we have Joe Biden, who basically is pretty much the same candidate? But what we got from her last night, with that amount of talking time, she actually came across as a very bright and intelligent individual who has a pretty funny sense of humor, and she actually was very aggressive. She actually went after Elizabeth Warren from the start on healthcare, about how she wasn't transparent, about how much more taxpayers would have to pay for her Medicare for All plan. And she had some really great lines last night. One was, again targeted at Elizabeth Warren, was, the difference between a plan and a pipe dream is something that you can actually get done. and that's one, that was a great attack on Warren because Warren has a lot of plans, but nobody's ever questioned her on whether or not most of these plans are just pipe dreams that can never get realistically, done. And it's nice to see somebody questioning, our front runner on those types of issues here. And also another great line was about the wealth tax, where it was kind of pointed at Tom Steyer, where it was sort of like, hey, even the billionaire here doesn't want to protect billionaires, and I think everybody's in agreement with wealth tax here, but it was just kind of a cool observation that she made, and so she did really come across as kind of a funny, bright, and aggressive individual here. I'm not sure, great performance, but I'm not sure whether or not this will actually up her polling averages or not, because that's sort of what's preventing her right now from actually qualifying for the next debate. We'll get into that later in terms of the qualifications, but I was glad to see her taking part in the centrist attack on Elizabeth Warren, and basically we got to see a lot more of her in terms of her personality. So I thought she did a great job, and certainly the talk time that she got helped a lot with that. Let's go into our next candidate here, and that is Cory Booker, the candidate for unification of the Democratic Party. That's one of the things that he's really stressed in the previous 3 debates, and actually stressed a lot in basically last night's debate about how it's so critical that we need to be united as a party. I'm speaking about the Democratic Party here, and how and basically his signature issues are criminal justice reform, and also baby bonds, government program to curb inequality. And unfortunately, that wasn't talked about, because I think this is a great idea, where basically every newborn will get a government savings account that will grow until they reach the age of 18 when they get into college, and basically everyone will have enough money to actually go into college, with 18 years worth of investment that the government is basically helping each child with. Unfortunately, criminal justice reform and baby bonds were not actually covered, in last night's debate. Again, Ellen DeGeneres and George W. Bush took a lot more time than some of these other key issues here. His RCP average is 1.3. Okay, he has actually qualified for the next month's debate, so which wasn't a deal breaker for him in terms of him getting his message out, because he has time for that. His talk time last night was about 11 minutes and 45 seconds, and I gave him about 3 stars. Again, it was okay, not great. He didn't get to talk about any of his signature issues really, but what I liked about Cory, and what I continue to like about Cory, is that he always stresses basically that the Democratic Party needs to be united, because if people see how divided we are, how divided the Democratic Party is, it just helps the incumbent president Donald Trump, and basically subverts the Democratic Party's chances of winning the next presidential election here. So a quote about that was basically, we've got one shot to make Donald Trump a one-term president, and how we talk about each other in this debate actually really matters. And I couldn't agree more with that statement. And so I give him 3 stars. He had kind of a weak debate, a weak argument related to UBI and wealth inequality. Basically, after Andrew Yang gave his basically defense of the UBI and how it would work for others, he basically came in there with some argument about raising the minimum wage to $15 per hour, which is great for employees. But the problem is that the difference between raising the minimum wage to $15 versus the UBI is that the only people that actually get the benefits of that wage are people who work. So basically, he's just saying that, caretakers at home, mothers who take care of sick kids, aren't worthy of any money, sort of like what a UBI would actually give everyone. So that's kind of going against what his stances are on wealth inequality, honestly. And I hope he kind of basically talk about that a little bit more in future debates, because I think because I think he's one of those people who might be actually pro UBI if he actually looked at the facts, because he is he is all about wealth inequality, or he is one of the candidates that are. So that's where I got from Cory Booker. So 3 ninjas for that. Okay, not great, but I thought he did a pretty good job. I really like his attitude. So let's get into our next candidate, and that is Beto O'Rourke, a former U.S. representative from Texas. And his central issues are immigration reform, rural hospital access, and a mandatory assault weapons buyback. Again, CNN, I think, blew the pooch here in terms of asking about immigration reform. But he spent a lot of time talking about his mandatory assault weapons buyback. Him and Pete Buttigieg really went after each other on this, and his RCP average is about a 1.8, okay, and his talk time last night was 13 minutes and 13 seconds, and I think a lot of that was basically debating Pete Buttigieg on the mandatory assault weapons buyback. It's a recent issue that he has come up with, based on the events in El Paso last month. And I'm giving him 2 stars for this only because he really did not defend his mandatory assault weapons buyback plan as well as I wanted him to, because Pete Buttigieg just went after him about how this is just kind of a silver object. It's unrealistic, and Beto couldn't really defend that at all. To me, he doesn't strike. He hasn't in the past 3 debates. I mean, it's kind of a disappointment actually. In the past 3 debates and also last night's debate, I just don't see that sense of urgency, from him. I don't see I still don't see much in a way of detailed policy implementation plans that he might have, to actually basically implement a lot of these signature issues that he has a stance on. And he's struggling here with that RCP average of 1.8, relative to all the hype and all the excitement that he garnered from during his announcement. I mean, he scored like $25 million within like a week of his announcement, and since then it's just kind of just fallen by the wayside. He's been sliding every month since then. So it's a shame. I like him as a person. I just wish that he had more urgency. He had more details. I mean, without urgency and excitement, and without details, you're really left with nothing as a candidate at this point. Nothing that can appeal to other to the voters and independents. And as a centrist, he didn't kind of join in with the other centrists on their attacks on Elizabeth Warren like I thought he would have, especially given his polling numbers. So kind of a disappointment. 2 ninjas for him on that. Let's get into another candidate here, and that is Andrew Yang. And his signature issues were establishing universal basic income of $1,000 per month for all Americans via a value-added tax. His RCP average is a 2.7, and his talk time last night that is incorrect there. That is really should be 9 minutes and 57 seconds of talk time there. So excuse that typo there. So it's really 9 minutes and 57 seconds. As I mentioned earlier, for a person that's polling, in the middle of the candidates, and raising $10 million last quarter, he certainly doesn't get a lot of talk time. And so again, only 9 minutes and 57 seconds there. But with the talk time that he gets in all these debates, he really, really pushes his messages across. So what I like about Andrew Yang is that he's facts-oriented, he's detailed-oriented, he's solutions-oriented, and he actually he's actually succinct enough in his speaking style to actually says all he wants to say in the amount of time given to him by the moderators. I mean, he hardly ever gets shut down by the moderators, unlike a lot of these other, long-winded, droning candidates that you have here. I think he did a great job last night because the moderators did ask questions that were sort of in his wheelhouse, basically wealth inequality. What are his plans for wealth taxes? And it was great. Basically, I wish he got in with some some talk about basically China and how we relate, how the foreign policy, with respect to China could be improved, but instead they just wanted to talk about Vladimir Putin and Russia instead. So no, again, I was kind of disappointed in some of the lines of questioning. Another point I have was basically, what's big in the news right now is, the NBA and how this whole issue that we have with NBA and their reaction to a certain general manager's tweet about supporting Hong Kong, basically, can affect people's thoughts on the whole, democratic movement that we're seeing right now in Hong Kong and what China's response was and yada yada yada, that type of stuff. Anyway, not to drone on about Andrew Yang, I thought he did a great job here because a few of the questions were in his wheelhouse. He argued that, again, universal basic income, the UBI, is a solution to the impending, job losses that us as a country will basically have, because of automation. Elizabeth Warren doesn't think automation's a danger, but I think Andrew Yang, in his argument against Elizabeth Warren, really crushed her in that debate. It is a danger. I mean, people can't start out at $0 anymore. People need help from the government in the form of some sort of, defined benefit to get that boot off their throats so they can actually invest in their own education for other jobs or invest in the local economy themselves. And also this plan does reward people who work at home, which, a lot of the plans with this, respect to federal jobs guarantee or raising the minimum wage doesn't, because those you actually need a job, and by saying that you don't believe that people at home, who take care of children shouldn't be rewarded, you're basically saying that they're not actually working. So I'm a big fan of the UBI. I'll make myself clear on that. I think it's a defined benefit like Social Security that doesn't have to start at age 62. And with value-added taxes, we will actually be able to fund the UBI based on taxes that Amazon and Google, Facebook, that they don't pay right now. So we will get our share of the money that they're pocketing right now. Good stuff. One of his quotes was awesome when he framed his UBI proposal as a positive vision in response to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And I noticed that the Fourth Industrial Revolution was a major talking point last night, but he was the first to coin it, and I think everybody just basically cheated off of Andrew Yang's homework with that talking point there. And he did a great job, and I think at the end of it, he actually convinced some of the other candidates, to basically say, the UBI isn't really that a bad idea. Julian Castro said that he was willing to pilot a UBI program, and Tulsi Gabbard actually embraced it as well. I agree with my friend Andrew Yang on this stuff. So hope he gets more talking time in the next debate. He's already qualified, but definitely I thought he did a great job in terms of laying out his proposals, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he had a lot of questions, given in his, that were in his wheelhouse to talk about, and he was a little bit more aggressive this time. He actually interrupted a couple of people, which I loved, because he doesn't do that. He basically runs on a campaign of positivity. But anyway, hopefully next time he'll have a lot more talk time. So 9 minutes and 57 seconds. That was it for him last night, but I still give him 4 ninjas for his performance last night. let's get into our next candidate, and that's Kamala Harris, the U.S. Senator from California. Her central issues are basically the middle class tax cut and a liberal civil rights agenda. RCP average is 4.5. Her talk time was 12 minutes and 24 seconds last night. You know, she was kind of just there last night. She didn't have that quote unquote breakout moment that she had in the June debate where she just went after Joe Biden and basically her polling numbers just went crazy, rocketed up to like the double digits right afterwards. But since then, her polling numbers basically has just slid. She's actually like fourth right now in her own state in terms of polling numbers. But again, she was just there. She didn't do poorly, but she didn't do great either. So I'm giving her 3 stars. It was just okay. I don't think it's going to affect the way people view her as a candidate, as a prospective candidate. And I think the trend lines are pretty clear. I think she's still going to be sliding down after this debate. Instead of, what was different about her yesterday versus other candidates, I noticed that she actually went after Trump the most, okay? A lot of candidates were going after each other or basically promoting their own proposals. She actually was the one that was the most kind of like, that gave the most anti-Trump rhetoric, and which was, on domestic and foreign policy, and it was sort of refreshing in that sense because, because again, the bottom line is, we need to win. The Democratic Party needs to win this election against Trump to actually try to implement a lot of these proposals that they're talking about. Things like how our president has sold out the U.S. workers and U.S. allies. Basically what has happened in Syria is yet again, Donald Trump selling folks out, and in this case, he sold out the Kurds, who basically fought with the U.S. and other allies and died to protect that region against ISIS. So, but really, that's really all she had to talk about was anti-Trump, because I don't remember anything else that she talked about that was of any substance. She mentioned again, like maybe 2 times, that she was an ex-prosecutor, and basically delved down into the minutia of prosecuting like the most irrelevant details. She wasted time arguing with Elizabeth Warren on why haven't you supported me in the call to ban Donald Trump from Twitter. And that's that's something that I personally believe is irrelevant and small potatoes in the whole scheme of things. Banning a president from Twitter is whatever. If that's the best that you have right now, then I can see why your poll numbers are sliding a bit here. So, but she is in the next debate, so hopefully that she can actually do a little bit better. But 3 ninjas, okay, not great, but sort of like what I expected from her. She hasn't changed much since the first debate, if you will. Let's get into our next candidate here, and that's Pistol Pete, or Mayor Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. His central issue is a generational identity and basically focused on climate change and economic opportunity. Okay, his RCP average is 5.0. He actually has been gaining a little bit in the polling numbers, and his fundraising is actually very, very good. He was second, I believe, in terms of overall fundraising for last quarter. His talk time was 12 minutes and 57 seconds. I gave him 4 ninjas here, and that's really because him and Amy Klobuchar were the only 2 centrists that actually went after the frontrunner, the progressive frontrunner, which is Elizabeth Warren here. I think he went after her from the start. He showed a lot more aggression, a lot more initiative, and she showed some urgency as well, which I really like, because he needs to show all that stuff, to basically show people that he's actually serious in this race and he wants to basically win this. And so I called him pretty much the center's champion of tonight. He is a centrist, obviously. He made arguments, last night, basically in that role, which I like, being the center's champion because of the way Joe Biden is, basically kind of flailing in terms of trying to basically defend himself and promote his ideals from the center. He decried, Tulsi Gabbard's approach to Syria, but he didn't attack her because, like everybody else does, about the fact that she's pro-Assad, which is far from the truth, or that she's a Russian plant. But he sincerely believes that, in American leadership on a global stage, that that is right to use force to protect other countries. You may disagree or agree with that stance, but he showed enough principle that he stood by it and defended it with vigor last night. To me, he trucked over Beto O'Rourke on that, on the mandatory, on O'Rourke's mandatory gun buyback program proposal that he has, saying how unrealistic it was and basically calling it a silver object. A shiny object that has no chance of passing. And I tend to agree with him because it's going to be hard to basically enforce that, as a mandatory proposal, because you are kind of tramping on Second Amendment rights if you take the Second Amendment rights literally. With that, great job, I thought. Again, he went after Elizabeth Warren on that. He went after Elizabeth Warren on healthcare. He went after Elizabeth Warren on taxes. It was great. So I saw a lot out of Pete, a lot more than the previous 3 debates, and hopefully he keeps it up because, I think he's positioning himself as an alternative right now to Joe Biden, and if he keeps this up, he can be a viable Joe Biden alternative. And actually appeal to more centrist voters. So let's get into our next candidate here, and that is good old Bernie Sanders. And I love Bernie because coming back and doing a 2.5-hour debate, after having heart surgery, 2 weeks ago is no joke whatsoever. And the thing is, he also came out with a lot more vigor, than the previous 3 debates. Granted, he was kind of sick, I believe, in the last debate, but. He showed a lot of vigor, and he really did dispel these worries about how he's too old, to handle the strenuous job as commander in chief and whatnot. He actually even joked about his health, about hey, I'm healthy, I'm feeling great, I'm in excellent health. He sort of pulled a Donald J. Trump line with those remarks, which I thought was pretty cool. And again, Bernie is going to be Bernie, right? I mean, central issue is going to be Medicare for all, free college tuition, and curtailing the influence of billionaires. And that's what he did yesterday, and he defended his policies again, yesterday. And I love it when he always talks about, hey, I wrote that damn bill, speaking of Medicare for all. And so he knows a lot more about it than, I believe that Elizabeth Warren does. I mean, Elizabeth Warren just talks about how she's for Bernie's Medicare for All plan, but yet she refuses to talk about it in detail, about how she's planning on implementing it. His RCP average is 15.2. It could climb up, with this debate. I think maybe his poll numbers have fallen because of worries about his health, but I think maybe it'll climb back up. Maybe there's now sort of disillusioned Warren voters of the way she handled some of the questions yesterday, and maybe she'll pick up some of those votes back. And also because of the way Joe Biden is sliding, that he may be able to pick up some of Joe Biden's votes. But nevertheless, I thought it was a great job. Talk time 13 minutes and 4 seconds. I give him 4 ninjas for this, only because basically coming into the debate and basically having that presence, showing the presence that he's had, years before and in a couple of debates before, after heart surgery, is so admirable, and it garners so much respect that I just have to give him these 4 stars. And again, 13 minutes isn't a lot of time for a perceived frontrunner, a top 3 frontrunner. He even has less than Amy Klobuchar, but he's never going to change. So, and we all know what he's about. So, it's just a matter where or not people can get over his perceived failings and actually nominate him as a viable Democratic nominee for president. So I like Bernie, and he did what he had to do last night. So 4 stars goes to him. Great job there. Now let's get into Elizabeth Warren here, and I struggled with how well she did. Some people, some of the pundits there thought she did a great job, as especially with the target on her back as being the front runner, basically staving off attacks from the center and also people from her left, other progressives. But I'll talk about that later. But anyway, U.S. Senator from Massachusetts. Her senator issues are income inequality, regulating big corporations, and political corruption. Her RCP average has been climbing steadily since the early summer. It's at 26 right now. She had the most talk time out of anybody in the debate last night at 22 minutes and 58 seconds. And that's probably because of the rules of the debate, right? Where, if your name is mentioned, then you get a chance to respond. And a lot of people were mentioning her name, right? Especially from the center. And she had all this time to respond. So I give her 3 ninjas here, okay? I thought she did a good job, in terms of staving off the attacks and defending herself. But she also, I think, showed some weaknesses in her understanding for some of her own proposals and how she would attack some of her own, how she would implement some of her own proposals that she has a plan for. One is, again, the Medicare for All. She supports Bernie Sanders, but yet is unwilling to basically talk about raising taxes for the middle class, which is actually explicitly stated in Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill. So, and she kind of was wishy-washy on that. Instead of using taxes, she says that she will not sign a bill that will increase costs for the middle class. Now, costs is not the same as taxes, okay? They're totally completely different words here, okay? You can keep taxes, you can actually increase taxes, but yet lower total costs for people. So I think it was obvious that was kind of like her backup plan in case she ever did raise taxes to actually implement a Medicare for All program. She's replaced Bernie Sanders, as sort of like the punching bag, right, if you will, against the centrists. And she did an okay job with it. Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg basically jabbed at her all night long about Medicare for All, about the wealth tax and everything else. Andrew Yang basically, I believe, crushed her on basically wealth tax versus a value-added tax arguments in terms of wealth inequality, as well as the universal basic income and how it actually helps people versus her idea that automation is not actually a danger in terms of job loss. And I believe her Social Security argument as a security blanket for people was very, very weak. Social Security, again, kicks in. She believes in basically putting more into Social Security, making it more solvent so people have that safety net in the future in case of job losses. But yet, Social Security you only get Social Security at age 62 at the earliest. So what if you're a unemployed truck driver who's basically lost his job to automation at age 30? How are you going to handle the rest of the 30 years before you actually? How are you going to handle 30 more years before you actually get that quote unquote increased Social Security net that she's proposing? Whereas Andrew Yang's universal basic income of $1,000 a month will actually help get that boot off her throat in those 30 years, so you can actually basically invest in yourself and invest in yourself in terms of education, in terms of job skills, and actually get a new job. Basically, help yourself out, until you retire. Okay. There's a couple weird moments with Tulsi Gabbard that she kind of flowed on. Tulsi challenged her whether or not challenged Warren whether or not she would support, her, pro-Syria, her anti-regime change war stance. And she really didn't say anything about that. And she was actually saved by the bell by CNN actually when Tulsi Gabbard tried to deflect another stance on, I believe, whether or not she was fit to be commander-in-chief given her lack of foreign policy experience. So, okay job. I don't think it's going to affect her either way. I think she's still going to remain a front runner. I think the trend lines are pretty much stabilized and clear right now that she's pretty much going to be top 2 to top 3 for the up until the primary season. And let's get into our last candidate here, and that's none other than Uncle Joe Biden, or Joe Biden, the former Vice President of the United States. Same true issue, okay, is pretty much restoring America's standing on the global stage, right? Harkening back to the era of Barack Obama. Our CP average at 27.8. Technically, he's the front runner, but given the error margin and the way the trend lines are going, I believe really Elizabeth Warren is the front runner in the national nomination, Democrat nomination. He had talk time of 16 minutes and 27 seconds, which was second. I don't know about Joe. Again, this is the fourth straight debate where I felt that he gave a weaker than expected performance. Every single time I see him on the debate stage, I wish that he wouldn't have all these gaffes or all these factually incorrect statements that he puts out. It seems like every fourth sentence that he basically speaks is wrong. Okay, and you can attribute it to age, memory loss, whatever. Not to put a joke on, not put a joke on this, but I don't know. He did better than the first 3 debates. Okay, I'll give him that. Okay, I'll give him 2. I still give him 2 ninjas as a weaker than expected performance, but he did better because the target's not on his back right now, and nobody was attacking him, directly. So he did better in that respect. His responses more crisp and more clear. I thought his closing argument was very good. About America, how great America is a country, and you got to stand up for America, yada yada yada, that sort of stuff. But man, during his questioning again, his responses to questions, his responses to his rebuttals, and his arguments are just so broken up and fragmented that it's very hard to understand, and it's very hard to know if he even has a real stance on a lot of these issues. That's why Pete Buttigieg, I think, served as a direct contrast to him last night. I mean, Pete Buttigieg was actually crisp. He actually defended his proposals, his policies very clearly. Everybody understands where he's at. I don't get that same impression with Joe Biden here. I don't understand where he's at. The only thing I know is that he served under Obama, and he wants to go back to the era of Barack Obama, whatever that is. Maybe that's all people want and need, and he doesn't have to do well in debates to actually win the nomination and win a presidential election. But in terms of pure debate performance, I thought he sort of basically languished, if you will, and was weak. Stronger than the first 3 debates, but still relatively weak. Is it going as planned? Is this campaign going as planned? I don't really think so here. I mean, he's slowly losing fundraising money. He entered the race with a lot of confidence, I believe, as a former VP, thinking that he was just going to truck everybody else and get the nomination like Hillary Clinton did in 2016. But he hasn't really defended himself well. In these debates with the other candidates, in terms of being a direct contrast, other than the fact that, his contrast to the other candidates is that he's unintelligible and he can't defend his policies and proposals very well, unfortunately. But he's still, up there in the top 2, and maybe again, maybe debates don't matter for this kind of stuff, and frequent rambling and stuff like that will, is okay with the voters because their minds are already set. Don't know. But anyway, on a more serious note, if I was his campaign strategist, which I'm not obviously, but if I was, I really would be worried right now in terms of he is sort of, based on the performance of these debates, he is creating room for rivals like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar to step up and take away some of his votes. The other two centrists who did go into attack mode last night and actually, I think, gained some votes and gained some popularity amongst the Democratic populace. So that is it for the candidate reviews here. Let's get into what the wheel thinks who won the fourth Democratic debate. And if you see my other streams, especially within the fandom, I like using the wheel because it gives to answer questions because it gives a randomness to the whole video or stream. And basically, I'm going to ask the wheel here, who won the fourth Democratic debate? So let's go ahead and spin this guy. And we will stop it right now. So according to the wheel, looks like the wheel thinks that Beto O'Rourke won the fourth Democratic debate last night, and sorry, wheel, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that. Because I gave Beto O'Rourke 2 stars because Beto was pretty much just like Beto in the past 3 debates, which is pretty much speaking but not really saying anything. And what he did say with respect to the mandatory gun buyback proposal, he basically didn't say enough or defended it well enough, and basically got crushed by Pete Buttigieg in terms of the argument that it was completely unrealistic. So no, Will, I don't think Beto O'Rourke won it, so I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that. But hopefully better luck next time. So let's get into our next debate and what's coming up in the election 2020 calendar. Well, October debate's over with right now, so we can look forward to another debate on November the 20th of next month. It's going to be held in Georgia, but the specific location is to be announced. So that hasn't been done yet here, and hasn't been cleared up yet. And then again, we're going to have a debate in December, as well as a debate in January 2020. And then February the 3rd is the start of the voting season, and starting with the Iowa caucuses. And basically up until through the month of February that ends with the South Carolina Democratic primary. Yeah, and these are where the polls are basically. So these early states are how people are basically qualifying for for the debates coming up. It's basically either national polls or polls in these early states. So again, we're gonna have two more months of debates until we really get into 3 more months of debates until we really get into the nitty-gritty of the voting season and basically paring down the list of candidates. So in terms of the 5th Democratic debate next month, we're looking on a Tuesday, November the 20th, 2019. Locations in Georgia. This time, the partners are going to be MSNBC and the Washington Post. And disregard the moderators; they are unknown yet. I didn't change the slides, so nobody knows who the moderators are. But if it's MSNBC, you can be sure that Rich Romano is going to be there as a moderator. So disregard the moderator's comment there in that slide because I was too lazy or I forgot to actually delete it. The qualifications have changed for the 5th Democratic debate. So next month, it's going to be a lot more strict now. Okay, so basically, again, just 2 components, polling and grassroots fundraising. But for the polling criteria, the candidate now, in order to qualify, must receive 3% or more support in 4 national polls. It was 2%. Or 5% or more support in early state polls, and that was 2% earlier in the last night's debate. So up until 2 weeks before the debate. So again, 3% is a pretty harsh limit. It's a little bit stricter limit here. 5% is 3% more than what people need to qualify for in these early state polls. So that's a big change. And in terms of the grassroots fundraising, instead of $130 1,000 unique donors. Now candidates need to have donations from at least 165,000 unique donors and a minimum of 600 unique donors per state in at least 20 states. It was 200 unique donors per state at least 220 states, I believe, or 400 unique donors. So the candidates who have actually met the polling and donor thresholds for the fifth debate are as following here. There's 8 of them. So we got Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, and Tom Steyer. For whatever reason, he's in there still. He's qualified for the fifth debate. So we are missing candidates who did well yesterday, especially Amy Klobuchar. She hasn't qualified yet. Beto O'Rourke hasn't qualified yet. Big name there. And Tulsi Gabbard hasn't qualified yet. Julian Castro hasn't qualified yet. So there's people, again, in danger of missing this debate for next month. And if you miss the debate, that's, in my opinion, kind of like a death knell to your campaign, because the general population can't see what you're all about, so you lose that exposure. So that's it, guys, for this stream. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it. It was pretty long, so sorry about that. And again, any questions, comments that you might have, please write them down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And with that, I will see you next time. Later.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Ultra Ninja JK, dupla jinx, bota chakra em cada linha de faca. Face, macramé no micado, passo espadas por frases. Sintático, repara no que digo, é paradigmático, não tenho paralelo, sou para lá de mágico. Sabes como rolo, martelo pneumático, técnica secreta do monstro roxo. Estamos a meter-nos no dojo, estamos a manter comos no jogo, só com uma espada nos tojos. Plano picado, não sabes de onde esta ave vem. Nenhum radar pode detectar onde está a nave mãe, tu sabes bem. Somos a clique, somos o clã. É Monster Jinx cabrão, respeito ao vais comer tartan. Na terra do nunca não digo banzai. Vivo na espunca e tenho um bonsai. Ninja que é ninja, ninja, frotas imperiais. E bate mal, logo bate mais. A minha crew não sem espelhos. Na rua, dragão azul, dragão vermelho. Sento o silêncio. Verso shinobi, nunca me canso. Sou de Nairobi, ágil como um ninja. Rápido como um ninja, letal como um ninja. Brutal como um ninja, fatal como um ninja. Forte como um ninja, secreto como um ninja. Devo mesmo ser um ninja.
Esta é para os meus ninjas, só para os meus ninjas. Onde é que estão os meus ninjas, 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 ninjas? Esta é para os meus ninjas, só para os meus ninjas. Onde é que estão os meus ninjas, ninjas, ninjas?